Very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady, and we do work on these issues, though we don't always agree. Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it is fair to say that our history is sorrowful, it is pitiful, and it's painful. But it's grounded upon a corruption of justice. And whilst we listen to the politics between Labour and Conservative and the back and forth in this chamber, you have to go back to 1998 to find that corruption of justice. The release of prisoners, the litany of failure, and the lamentable approach to those who terrorised our society across communities. In Northern Ireland, On the Run scheme was not the same as letters of comfort, but royal prerogative of mercy and a de facto amnesty to paramilitaries. Only 2 weeks ago, we had the Minister from the other place, from the Northern Ireland office, meet the 25 victims, one of whom a member of our party shot in 1981 in Knocknacloy by a member of the Provisional IRA. A champion within the Sinn Féin movement until he fell out with them. He sought sanctuary in Switzerland, he sought sanctuary in Sweden. Only when he became an opponent of the peace process was he ever amenable to justice. He stood as a dissident representative in the 2007 election, and he was arrested at the count and convicted for 20 years for attempted murder of one of my colleagues. That was a de facto amnesty for as long as he was brought in to the political process. We have heard, victims have heard, those innocent victims of Northern Ireland have heard this government promise to repeal and replace, and yet that's not what they are seeing. They have heard a promise to protect veterans, and yet that, Madam Deputy Speaker, is a mirage. There is no specific protection for veterans within this piece of legislation. None. And when we heard the Veterans Minister on the radio last week asked 4 times, could she rule out a member of the IRA being on the Victims Advisory Forum, she could not. That the Secretary of State did not take the opportunity to say he would accept an amendment to ban paramilitaries from that advisory board, I think, is a shame. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, shame runs throughout the legacy of our past and government's approach to it. Innocent victims, does it work for them? I have to tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, innocent victims are sick, sore and tired of people on either side of this bench, and maybe even these ones, pretending to speak for them. Yes, it is true, some innocent victims want truth. Some innocent victims want to know what happened, but others want justice. They want justice, and they have not received it. For veterans, are there protections for veterans? No. Does the word veteran feature in this legislation at all? No, it does not. Victims and veterans are sick of gaslighting, of this psychological torture of having their own beliefs, their understanding and their memory challenged and questioned to the point where they think they've got something wrong. For paramilitaries, well, paramilitaries were invited to Lambeth Palace to create the amnesty scheme that the Conservatives brought through, and will be satisfied enough that their concerns have been listened to by this Labour government. I have raised with the Secretary of State time and again the lamentable failure on his part to support the Director of Investigations solely because he has a history in the RUC. And what's the answer to that? The answer is to create an equal position to sit alongside him. We have a Human Rights Commissioner in Northern Ireland who, even though the Supreme Court has attested the independence of the Director of Investigations and the ICRIR, we have a Secretary of State who has decided, at the behest of the Irish, to create a co-equal position for fear of contamination. That is outrageous. It is not legally sustainable, it is not legally required, and it cuts to the heart of the professionalism and the integrity not only of that individual, but of all those who served in the Royal Ulster Constabulary, and 302 of which were murdered by paramilitaries in Northern Ireland. So when we talk about protections for veterans, what about those who served in the PSNI or the RUC before them? What about those who served alongside and were deployed alongside members of the armed forces? Where's their support, Secretary of State? It's not in this legislation. Whenever the Northern Ireland Retired Police Officers Association had to go to court themselves, who paid their bills? They did. They had to raise tens of thousands of pounds to challenge the police ombudsman who was rewriting the past, to challenge a police ombudsman who asserted collusive behaviours, a legal phraseology which does not exist. They've had to defend their honour by themselves because they have had no government of any hue that has stood by their side and defended them. They defended us, and so too we, Secretary of State, should defend them. And that the Secretary of State has sullied himself in this Parliament by the engagement with the Irish Republic. Sullied himself. I have it on good authority that the Irish Republic have cautioned against amendments. The Irish Government construed a Memorandum of Understanding on the OMA inquiry to ensure they would only assist in answering what the UK authorities could have done. What the UK authorities could have done to prevent that atrocity, not what they could have done yet. For decades they harboured terrorists in there. They refused extradition. They supported and financed terrorism in Northern Ireland. And has the Secretary of State put them under any pressure, Madam Deputy Speaker? No, he has not. What legal obligation have they to see whether this legislation passed as to whether they adhere to the European Convention of Human Rights? None.